Hey everyone, it's Deja from Knit and Crochet Ever After, and today we are going to be fixing some dropped stitches. So, in knit, unlike crochet, when you lose a stitch, you can have some really big problems. We're going to deal with just knitting and purling stitches, like when we have kind of this dense fabric. There's a whole other realm when you get into like lace knitting and lifelines and all kinds of stuff, but since we're doing just kind of beginner work right now, we're just going to focus on what do we do when we drop a knit stitch and what do we do when we drop a purl stitch. So as we are working our project, whatever it may be, right now I have a 2x2 rib, which is knitting and purling together, and you drop a stitch. So right here I'm going to drop this knit stitch. What should I do? If it's not all the way pulled through, you can just use your fingers and kind of yank on it and pull it back up. And remember, if you haven't seen my How to Read Your Stitches video, when you're looking at your loop, the right side should always be facing you on the needle. You just slip it right back on and you can continue on. But what happens if you drop it and, like I just did, I pulled it through and I actually lost the stitch off of my previous row? That's where your crocheting is going to come in handy. Well, I'm going to grab my crochet hook and I'm going to fix this. So I'm going to grab as much as I can, so if I don't lose this next one, I'm going to grab and pull that out until I have a loop. And if we look at it, it looks like a foundation chain. That's going to help us to figure out how we fix our stitch. When you have it looking like a foundation chain, you're going to fix it just like you're working a foundation chain. You're going to put your hook through just like it was a chain, and you're going to grab that loop, that nice big loop that you just lost, to create your next knit stitch. So you're going to kind of yarn over and grab it and pull it through that stitch, and now you have fixed that previous row. When I have it like this, if I put it on, we have a twisted stitch. We're backwards because we have the left in front. So just make sure that when you're pulling it off and fixing it, you put that right loop in front so you're ready to fix your stitch. Same thing if you lose a couple rows worth, you just kind of pull it, because you're going to have these. This is my working yarn, don't get confused. Let me move this in the front so it's not showing like a strand. So every time you drop a stitch, you're going to get this big strand. So here's one drop stitch, here's two drop stitch, I'll even drop a third. So here's three drop stitches. Sometimes it's a aesthetic. People drop stitches on purpose to make cool little designs in their project, but most of the time you don't want that. So grab that loop wherever you can and insert your hook to stop it from dropping. Then you're going to do one at a time. So find the very first loop that is dropped, yarn over, pull it through, go to the next one that's dropped, yarn over, pull it through, go to the next one that's dropped, yarn over, pull it through. Now you've fixed all your drop stitches with your crochet knowledge and you're ready to move on. Don't worry about the hook size. You can go a little bit smaller to get into that loop if you want, all the way up to the size of the needle. It's just a little bit easier with the drop stitches to get in. Because for the size of the hook, whatever you have available really, as long as you can pull the yarn with it. So with this chunky yarn, I wouldn't be able to use like a 3.5 millimeter because it would probably just be too small. But having your crochet hooks near you when you're working can help you fix those drop stitches. So let's get over to it would help if I had my yarn so I can knit with it. Let's get over to a purl. So this is either way with, if you're working stockinette, whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. You're just looking at what stitch that you need to fix. So this time we're going to drop a purl. So we slide off, same thing, you just slide it back on if you haven't lost your loop, but if you have, oh, this looks much more difficult with these purl loops. how do we fix this? Easy, turn it around. Look, now you got a foundation chain because it's a knit stitch on the other side. So just remember, purls or knits on the other side. Flip it around and do the same thing. Insert and pull through, insert and pull through. Put it back on your needle with the right side in the front. Oh, I'm on the wrong side because I'm backwards, so put it on the other needle and then flip it back around. And now you're ready to finish your stitch. It's like magic. Our crocheting comes in real handy when we drop stitches. So other knitters that have never crocheted, they might be like, what do I do? Us, we just foundation chain and it's fixed. So what happens though if we're in a stitch pattern where it has a couple knits and a couple purls? Let me show you. Okay, so here I have kind of a little basket weave and it looks like a jumbled mess. If you don't know how to read your stitches, this is probably looking very confusing. But when you break it down, this is just 2 knits and 2 purls. So it's 2 rows of 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls. And then when you come back, it's the opposite. It's 2 purls, 2 knits, 2 purls, 2 knits. So it's just on top of each other. So if we look at this spot right here, we can see 1, 2 knits, and then 1, 2 purl, and then 1, 2 knit. So when you're actually working the pattern, you will be used to seeing what you're doing and you'll know what your stitch pattern is. Right now, me just explaining it probably still might confuse you a little bit, but when you're doing the pattern yourself, you're going to be working this over and over again, so you're going to get really used to seeing it very quickly. But when you're trying to fix a stitch that has fallen with something like this, you really need to know how to read your stitches. So if you don't know how to read your stitches, go check out my Reading Your Stitches video. I just realized, look at that. I think my cat's been chewing on my needle. Okay, so anyways, now we are going to save a stitch. So we're working our stuff, we pull this off and we accidentally pull it too far and we like lose a bunch of rows. So we're gonna get all the way down to these purls here. So I'm gonna pull 1, I'm gonna pull 2, and I'm gonna pull 3. So we lost, I think I pulled 4, didn't I? Yeah, I pulled 4 out. So we need to fix this, but if I just start chaining it like a foundation chain, I'm gonna have a row of knits and I totally lose my stitch pattern that contained purls. So I need to stop before I do anything and I need to look. What is below here? What do I see? I see 1 knit stitch and I see another knit stitch. So I know, if you're only 6 rows in, it's going to be easy to see, but if you're 200 rows into a big scarf, you need to be able to go, okay, what's here? So if it's over here, like if this was a big old scarf, I could see, oh, here's some purls, here's 2 knits, here's 2 purls, and then if I dropped it here, I would know my knit stitches are next. Here, we only have those 2 to go off of, so I see 2. Now I need to purl, so this is like my foundation chain. If I pull this through, I just created another knit, so I don't want to do that. What I'm going to do is how we did the purl fix. I'm going to come in from this side and grab it. So I'm going to flip over. I don't want to lose my stuff here. So I'm holding onto that loop. So here's my loop. I'm grabbing it. And then I'm going to create a purl. So when I do that, I get a knit stitch on this side. So I have 2 purls here and a knit stitch. We know that we did 2 rows of this, so I need to do another one on this side. So I'm going to grab my next strand of yarn and pull through. So I can just keep this in because I know I need to do knit stitches next, or on this side it would be purls, so I need to flip back over to the other side. I'm just going to keep that in there so I don't lose what I already fixed. Then I'm going to make sure, because you always want it in the front, so if I start like doing it from behind here, it's going to look weird. Like if I I'm switching it around, but if I can't grab it, right? So I have to bring that loop to the front and push all those strands behind. So I have those 2 purls that I just made. Now I need to foundation chain myself a knit stitch and then another knit stitch. And now I have fixed my problem. With this bigger yarn, it is much easier to see. With smaller yarn, it's going to be more difficult. So practice losing your stitches. You know, usually you don't want to lose your stitches, but I say make lots of gauge swatches and practice dropping your stitches so that you can practice putting them back on. Because once you get into a project, and if you're not used to putting your stitches back on your needle and you lose a couple, you're going to get really frustrated and you'll probably end up ripping out your project and starting over because you won't know how to fix it. So I suggest doing lots of gauge swatches. Whatever first project you want to try, do that stitch pattern, but in a smaller, more condensed version so that you can drop your stitches. You know, just do a couple rows like this, drop the stitches, fix them. It's going to pay off in the long run so that you don't have to do it while you're creating your project. So that's how you're going to fix dropped knit and purl stitches. As I do more projects in the knit, more projects in knit, I will have sections in each project depending on the stitch pattern on how to fix certain mistakes. So you'll see more, like I'm going to do a ribbed scarf very soon. I'll show you how to fix those drop stitches from there. So each project I have is going to give you a little bit more information, but this is just kind of the basics. If you have any questions, please leave them below. Make sure you subscribe, I can't talk, so that you can see all these videos that I got coming out very soon. And thank you for watching.